Hey friends, it's me, Em again, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things sinister. If you are interested in true crime or if you like all things horror related, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That way you can join me for some morbid conversation. And the conversation for today is going to be those 5 pictures with the sinister, disturbing, or just general interesting background. I do have 5 more pictures that we have not talked about on this channel today. And we are going to be starting our chat off with Ricky Jackson. On May 19th, 1975, Harold Franks was murdered during a robbery in Cleveland, Ohio at a grocery store. This picture is a picture of Ricky Jackson, the man who was arrested, found guilty, and originally sentenced to death for the murder of Harold. This picture is one that shows Jackson happy to be seated on the couch in his home. In all honesty, there's no place he'd rather be, and it's probably because he thought he'd never be there. Because this picture was taken after his release from prison, where he spent almost 40 years. Ricky Jackson spent the majority of his life in prison for a crime that he didn't actually commit. What makes his missed years so incredibly heartbreaking is the fact that the only piece of evidence that they had against him was an eyewitness statement from a 13-year-old boy that ended up being coerced. There was no physical or forensic evidence against him, and he had no previous criminal history. Not only that, the 13-year-old witness, Eddie Vernon, didn't actually witness the shooting. He had been the paper boy for Ricky's family and was friends with Ricky's younger brother. It was one of Eddie's classmates who had told him about the shooting and had told him that Ricky was the one involved. Eddie would end up going to the police with this information, but later wanted to recant his story as he didn't actually witness Ricky doing anything. He was told by police that it was too late for him to change his story and told him that he just needed to stick with it. And so he did. And this was used to put Ricky Jackson behind bars for almost 40 years. Unlike the others who were arrested for this crime, since Ricky was classified as the one who actually pulled the trigger, he was not granted parole, and he was originally sentenced to death before having it later dropped to life in prison. It wouldn't be until 2011 that the Cleveland Scene magazine would look into the case and outline the inconsistencies in Eddie Vernon's testimony. This got the wheel going to have the Innocence Project file for a petition for a new trial for Ricky. In November of 2014, motions were actually granted for Ricky to get a new trial, and because of this, his case was actually dismissed, and he ended up being released almost 40 years later for a crime that he did not commit that took place in 1975. This picture is a picture of a young teenage couple, Sierra Halseth, who was 16 years old at the time, and Aaron Guerrero, who was 18 years old at the time. It's not so much a picture as it is a still from a recording that they had made on their cell phone. And in this recording, the couple were laughing together as they celebrated day number 3 after committing a murder. Sierra is the daughter of former Republican member of the Nevada Senate, Elizabeth Helgelian, and her ex-husband, Daniel Halseth. The couple had divorced in 2012, and Elizabeth had Daniel arrested for open and gross lewdness against her, which aided her in gaining custody of the couple's 3 children that they had together. Elizabeth would move herself and her 3 children away from Daniel in Nevada entirely before returning back to the state sometime later. At this time, their daughter Sierra had been wanting to spend more time with Daniel and would frequently stay at his home. It was during this time that Sierra and Aaron began to date against their parents' wishes. The parents ended up putting their feet down and forbidding the relationship when they found out that the couple had planned on running away together. In response to this, on April 9th, 2021, Sierra and Aaron would end up going to Daniel's house and stabbing him over 70 times, puncturing both his lungs and major arteries before attempting to dismember him and attempting to set his body on fire. They ended up just leaving the mess there, stealing money from him and debit cards, and taking off together. They would end up being arrested in Salt Lake City not long after. They both ended up pleading guilty to 9 separate counts, including first-degree murder, arson, and robbery. The two are being charged as adults, though because of her age, Sierra will not be getting the death penalty. Their sentencing is scheduled to take place this month. One of the things that is so sad about this case is how much Daniel just absolutely loved his kids and how heartbroken he was when Elizabeth had moved them out of state. He was a stay-at-home father to his children for many years, and he was so excited when his kids ended up moving back closer to home and he was able to spend more time with them. And then one of his kids ended up turning their back on him in the most brutal way possible. Now, if you're like me, one of the very first major news stories that I had seen as a child was Princess Diana and her ultimately tragic and very sudden death. Now, since her death, conspiracy theories and speculations have come out. But did you know that allegedly Princess Diana had written a letter about 10 months before her accident that predicted her fate? Paul Burrell, former butler of Princess Diana, claimed that she had given him this note, signed and dated by her, as what she would allegedly consider to be insurance policy. In the note, she writes that she believes Prince Charles is planning an accident in her car, and she thinks he is doing this so that he could go on to marry Tiggy Leg Burke, who is the nanny for Prince William and Prince Harry. Though Princess Diana died in 1997, this note was kept secret by Burrell until 2003, in which he included it in a book that he wrote. This would lead many to question the validity of the note. However, police would question Prince Charles, who would cooperate and answer their questions, but as there was no other evidence outside of the note showing any involvement with Prince Charles, it never went beyond just questioning him about his knowledge of the note or the reasoning behind it. His father, Prince Philip, however, was less cooperative and declined assisting with the investigation. Now, the British Metropolitan Police have looked into a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding Princess Diana's death. And to be quite honest, we might not ever know the full story, no matter how much investigation is done. But if this note is genuine and not just a ploy to help Burrell sell more books, it makes you wonder, is the royal family hiding something? And if so, what? In the year 2011, an extended string of grave robberies would end up leading Russian police to the apartment that Anatoly Moskvin shared with his parents. When police entered his home, they would find proof that it was in fact Anatoly who had been the one who had been desecrating the graves, as they found things such as metal nameplates that would be used on tombstones in the cemetery. But Anatoly was doing so much more than just stealing nameplates or ransacking coffins for valuables. Inside this small apartment, police found 26 large dolls that were kept throughout his home, on shelves, positioned on furniture, and placed on the floor. But it's what these dolls were made of that was truly terrifying, because underneath the plaster and paint were the mummified bodies of 26 females, ranging in age from 3 years old up to 29 years old. Though he lived with his parents, they were gone for large portions of the year, and when they were home, they claimed to have no knowledge of Antoli's graveyard obsession and thought he just had an extensive doll collection. After his arrest, Antoli would say that he did this because he felt horrible for the souls of dead children, and he would often look up obituaries of those who had passed at a young age. When he would find one, he would go out that night and sleep on their grave, waiting for the spirit to speak to him. And if it did, he would dig the child up in order to mummify them before bringing them back to his home for his ritual of turning them into a doll in hopes of bringing their spirit back to life here on earth. Antoli was able to do this over the course of 10 years without being caught. And when he was caught, he was fully cooperative with the police. In May of 2012, he was deemed unfit to stand trial, and he was actually diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. He ended up being institutionalized, and though he regularly gets reevaluated, it is there where he will ultimately stay. Our final picture is a picture of Randy Stair, a YouTuber who was known by his community as Andrew Blaze. This picture is a picture from one of his last videos of him doing a coin flip. And this coin flip would ultimately affect not only his life, but the lives of so many others. The point of the coin flip was deciding the location where Randy would enact his planned mass shooting, the choices being between his home or the grocery store he worked at. Based on the toss, Randy would end up going to his workplace, making sure to pack 2 shotguns that he would be using that night. Shortly after arriving, Randy would make sure to block the emergency exits as well as making sure the doors were locked. 5 employees, including Randy, were working that night, and Randy went around the store hunting them down. He ended up killing 3 of the other employees before he would turn the gun upon himself and take his own life, leaving only 1 survivor from that night. Randy idolized the Columbine shooters. He would frequently wear the natural selection shirt that Eric Harris was known for. He also made short videos on mass shootings, kept journals documenting his morbid fantasies, wrote troubling stories that he turned in at school, and documented his decline over his YouTube channels. Despite having multiple warning signs, Randy was opposed to treatment or therapy. He wouldn't even consider speaking with a counselor, despite the fact that he would greatly benefit from it. One of the more eerie parts about this crime is Randy actually had it set to upload files and videos the night of the crime to his Twitter account, and these files were labeled suicide tapes, digital set, and journal. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video, especially since I don't really have a consistent schedule. You're always free to turn on the post notification bell, and that will notify you the next time I sit down right here for another morbid chat. And until that next time, like I always say, take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you guys later, all right? Bye.